breaking news from the Live 5 newsroom. The former North Charleston police officer who shot and killed a man in 2015, in April of 2015, has entered a guilty plea. It happened just moments ago. Michael Slager entered the plea in federal court in downtown Charleston. Our Bill Sharp is standing by with the very latest outside the courtroom live. Bill?
Debbie, it's all over here at the federal courthouse. It just ended about 13 and a half minutes ago. Took about half an hour to work through the process. Michael Slager, as expected, pleaded guilty to using excessive force in the shooting death of Walter Scott, as you pointed out 2 years ago. Harv Jacobs just got out of the courtroom. Harv, it was pretty cut and dry. Now it's just waiting for the sentencing.
Yeah, Bill, and that's going to take a while. Michael Slager wore a gray suit. It looked like he just got a haircut, too, when he came to court. He went up in front of Judge David Norton, who asked him, "Do you know why you're here today?" And Slager responded, "Yes, sir, I'm here to change my plea to guilty." At that point, they went through the usual things they go through in sentencing, reading over a several-page report, asking Mr. Slager if he understood everything in the report. He said yes. And then at the end, they accepted the guilty plea. Michael Slager pled guilty to that one count of using excessive force. And basically, he was handcuffed in the front of his hands like this. He hugged his attorney, Andy Savage. He was taken away to the jail where he'll stay until he is sentenced at a later date. Michael Slager's family was there. Also, Solicitor Scarlett Wilson and her deputy solicitor, Bruce Durant, were there. Of course, as a result of this plea today, the state case against Slager, the murder case, will be dropped, as well as the two other federal charges against him, Bill. So now there's going to be a pre-sentencing report. They will decide after that report the sentencing guidelines. That's how it's in the federal system for Michael Slager, and we'll find out how much time he'll serve.
But I saw, too, that federal officials have agreed to ask for a three-tiered reduced sentence for Michael Slager. Of course, it's up to the judge to decide exactly what he wants to do. Regardless of the recommendation by the feds in this case, the judge could say, no, I want to do more or I want to do less. So we'll just have to wait for that. Also, Harv, the family of Walter Scott expected here momentarily to hold a news conference. Liza Lucas will be covering the family reaction. In fact, we will continue to have team coverage here from the federal courthouse in downtown Charleston. Debbie, any questions from you?
I do have a question, Bill. I understand that this case was ready to move forward, as a matter of fact. Do you have any idea what led to this plea deal?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was a good deal. Plus, it avoids another trial for him. It also avoids the potential of going to prison for life. That was the maximum sentence. What about you, Harv? Any ideas on that?
Bill, there's no doubt he's going to get a good deal here. And what we consider a good deal, who knows? But he's not going to go to prison for life. We know that now as a result of this plea.
He will go to prison, I suspect, just not for life.
Yes, I would be very surprised, Bill, if Michael Slager does not go to prison. The big question is for how long.
Solicitor Wilson says now that Slager has pleaded guilty to a willful violation, admitted the facts we set out to prove, and waived the right to appeal his conviction, a successive prosecution by the state is not necessary. So she's saying that it is not necessary to have another trial, and they are satisfied with the deal that was made today.
Liza Lucas just talked to attorney Andy Savage. He's the lead attorney representing Michael Slager. I can't wait, Liza, to hear what attorney Savage had to say about his client's guilty plea.
Well, if you've been in the courtroom with Andy before, you know he's a man of words, but today he had very few. He said today it's about the Scott family, commenting on this case and where Michael Slager's family and how they're feeling right now. That will be saved for another time. Today he said the focus is on the Scott's family. We do expect them to come out shortly, but very few words. He acknowledged that much, Bill, but other than that, had very little to say to us right now leaving the courtroom with his team.
And you know, earlier, Liza, Mr. Savage released a statement saying, I hope now that my client, Michael Slager, is taking responsibility for the shooting death of Walter Scott, that will help the family as they continue to grieve over their lost loved one. That from Andy Savage's office a little bit earlier today. Liza, thank you. We expect family reaction coming, in just a few minutes, Liza?
Just a few minutes. We're watching now that door. I expect the Scott family and their attorneys. Solicitor Scarlett Wilson was also there with them today in the courtroom. We were watching her go in earlier, so we'll see if she also takes the podium to stand alongside this group.
All right, Debbie, once again, when the family comes out, we will certainly be covering them to hear their reaction to the fact that Michael Slager, the man who shot and killed their loved one, Walter Scott, today in federal court has pleaded guilty to using excessive force in killing Walter Scott. And as Harv just says, what that means is the state charge charges against Michael Slager drop, the murder charge and any other charge. There will be no state trial for Michael Slager. Harv?
Bill, it's interesting, the plea agreement, I wanted to say, it basically said that Slager willfully shot Scott. There was no mention in the plea agreement that Scott ever grabbed his taser. You remember in all of these hearings, the first trial, he's claimed that Scott grabbed his taser, and the plea agreement did not say that. It said that he fired the taser once, missed him, fired a taser again as he ran, hit him, that Scott got up and ran unarmed away, and that's when Slager fired 8 shots at Scott, hit him in the back 5 times. No mention in the plea agreement of a tussle over the taser, which was a big focus of contention with all these experts that Andy Savage brought in, you remember. All that money he spent, the $500,000 he spent on these experts who said we could prove it with animation diagrams that he did grab the taser, he was right up on him and came at him.
No mention of that in the plea deal, and it was a plea deal. When anytime, Debbie, as you know, having covered the courts for years, anytime you make a plea deal, you get something in return. If you agreed to plead guilty, what are you going to get for that? In this case, Michael Slager gets several things. He probably gets, Harv, a reduction in his sentence. He also gets the state charges. Don't forget, this is federal court. He gets the state charges against him dropped completely. So in a way, you could look at it perhaps as a win-win all around, except that, you know, Walter Scott is no longer with us, and his poor family continues to grieve for the loss of that man.
We're going to digest what happened. I have attorney Robbie Robbins with me right now. We have you and I both have a copy of the plea deal, which is about 12 pages, 11, 12 pages long, and also his indictment. Considering the fact that his state trial ended in a mistrial, we're heading into federal trial, is this a good deal for both sides?
I was listening just now, Debbie, to Bill and Harv, and I think it is a win-win for both sides. I really do. The victims' families get the certainty of a conviction now. We get to avoid a second state trial, which I'm sure they did not want to go through. Mr. Slager now also gets some certainty in that he knows at some point that he will receive a definite sentence. We don't know right now how much.
But Elder Johnson, let me start with you. Michael Slager has now pleaded guilty to using excessive force in shooting and killing Walter Scott. You are with the National Action Network. What's your reaction to his plea, his guilty plea?
Well, I really want to wait until the sentences form of this case here. Pleading guilty, I'm satisfied with that. I believe the family is satisfied with him pleading guilty. It relieve a burden off the state, you know, but we're still waiting on the sentencing.
Well, what would you like to see him get, Elder Johnson? We've heard that federal prosecutors, the feds, are going to recommend a reduction of 3 levels in his sentence because he has pleaded guilty. So he won't get life. He will probably get some prison time. We just don't know how much it's going to be. What would you think would be appropriate?
I would think from 0 to 35 years. From 35 years, not life sentence, but 35 years would be.
So 35.
We'll be satisfied.
You'll be satisfied with that.
This has been a long road, as you might imagine, for all of us, and we're grateful that the Department of Justice decided to get involved in this case. You know, I think it's so important, and the nation, if not the world, has watched how Charleston reacted to this event. They were led by the Scott family. Our community looked to the Scott family in this horrific time of their life for guidance, for instruction on how to act, how to react. And they have acted with dignity and grace throughout. They have been through a lot. It has taken its toll emotionally, physically, but they've been with us every step of the way. And I tell you, I hope that no other family has to go through what they've gone through, but they certainly have been a model with how to handle prosecutors, how to handle law enforcement, how to handle you, how to handle the community. You know, we have built a solid friendship, relationship. It didn't start out that way. And Mama Judy and I and Papa Scott had a great visit, and we chatted, and the tears started. And what was incredible to me as we sat and talked about this plea and they're wanting this plea to go forward. And I thought she was tearful about the killing. But she looked at me and she said, Michael Slager has a family too, and he has a son. And that compassion that she has shown has really meant the world to all of us here in Charleston, in North Charleston, in this community.
I'd like to give honor to the Lord, who is in my life, and he is the head of my life. I thank God for all that he has done, because today is a day of victory for Walter. We got justice. And I thank God for all of those that worked with us, that worked for us, that believed in us. And I thank God because God never fails. I know that he doesn't. And he's in our life, and we are so glad that we trust God. He said to wait on him. And I knew that God would renew our strength. And God did that. He was our strength. In the time of weakness, I tell you, God is so good. I would not serve another God, but the God that I know that he's able. And won't he do it?
Yes, he will.
God will do it.
Yes, he will.
What he promised, God will hold fast to his promises. I just like to thank Charleston. They say, holy city. This is a holy city. If you have the peace and you have the love of God on the inside, you can be peaceful through it all. And I love my son. I miss him. I miss him dearly. And I thank God for justice.
Today was a good day for justice. Thank God for justice in Charleston. Judy Scott, the mother of Walter Scott. We just finished with a news conference the family of Walter Scott held. His brother Anthony had this to say when I asked him. I said, Mr. Scott, what do you think a fair sentence is for Michael Slager now that he's pleaded guilty to killing your brother by using excessive force? And Anthony Scott looked in my eyes and he said, my brother is dead. Nothing less than life in prison for Michael Slager will be fair.
Sure. How do you feel? Any sense of that closure today?
Yes, we have a lot of closure today. It's not complete, but we do have some closure today. And that was the admission of guilt, that he did wrong. That meant a whole lot today. And that's all we wanted from the beginning, and not to continue to tell a lie about what actually happened that day, but tell the truth. And we saw that happened today, and we are truly grateful for that. And then we move on to the citizen part. But that was a great victory right there.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to you, Robbie Robbins, talking about where you believe Michael Slager will serve his sentence. It will be federal prison, obviously,
yes,
because he is pleading guilty to a federal charge.
Correct.
So what will they take into consideration when the prison's agency decides where he will serve his time?
That will certainly be something that they look at when they do the pre-sentence report. And
Okay.
I'm sure that they will get input from the defense team as to his health and as to any number of factors that might weigh in him being confined in a federal prison.
Especially considering that he is a former police officer and the crime that he's pleading to.
Most
Is there a
certainly.
concern about that?
There definitely would be, and I'm sure that will be taken into consideration. Also, they generally try to keep inmates in the federal system fairly close to families if they can, and I would expect that he would be somewhere in the southeast, but that will be determined by the Federal Bureau.
We've got Mr. Walter Scott Sr., Miss Judy Scott, and then we've got Rodney Scott, who is the brother of Walter. Let me start, Miss Scott, with you. How do you feel right now?
Well, I thank God for the victory.
To God be the glory.
Yes, for all the things that he has done.
Are you, Miss Scott, are you relieved now that this is almost over? We still have the sentencing, but it's almost over. Are you relieved that Michael Slager pleaded guilty and said, yes, I did use excessive force in killing your son?
Yes, I'm glad that he admitted to what he did. I was praying for him and his family the whole time.
And you said you forgave him, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Because the forgiver is on the inside of me. I know Christ for the pardon of my sin. And he forgave me one day, and I've got to forgive him.
You are quite a woman, Miss Scott. You are quite a woman. Let's toss it now to Colby Satterfield. She's at the Charleston County Jail, the Al Cannon Detention Center. Colby, can you hear me?
Bill, I can. I am here. I've been outside the Al Cannon Detention Center for about an hour now, and two dark SUVs just pulled up. We've been waiting for Michael Slager. We're not sure if this is in fact him, but you can see there are two armored guards in between us and the vehicle. Now we're going to try and see who this person is they brought in the back of the car. You can see they're doing everything on the back side where we can't see. You can see they're all walking over towards that vehicle. I would presume to get somebody out. At this time, we just can't see who that is. Trying to peer through. We see somebody getting out. See walking inside. You can see they just walked Michael Slager into the Al Cannon Detention Center, followed by several people following in behind him. Now, we're not sure how long he's going to be here in this jail, but we do know it is going to be until the sentencing, and that could be anywhere from 60 to 90 days, and then he will then be moved to a federal prison. So as you all just saw, Michael Slager has just arrived moments ago to the Al Cannon Detention Center here in North Charleston. I'll send it back to you guys.